We begin, though, this morning with that grim milestone in the pandemic. More than 1 million people have now died from COVID-19 in the U.S.
It's a number few thought was possible when the pandemic began nearly 2 years ago, and it comes as cases rise across the country once again. Now, we have team coverage to mark this somber milestone. Dr. Scott Hadlin, the chief of adolescent medicine at Mass General Hospital for Children, will join us in a moment. We're going to begin with NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson, who is in Kirkland, Washington, the place where the coronavirus really first took hold here in the U.S. Steve, good to have you with us this morning. We know Kirkland was the first to deal with COVID in the U.S. We were all watching as cases started to unfold there. Walk us through what those early days were like, especially for the healthcare workers who had to deal with a virus that we'd really never seen before.
You know, Joe, there's been some revisionist disputes about where the first death was, where the worst this virus hit as far as per capita in the country. There's no discussion, as you said, about who had to deal with this first. And that was the healthcare workers right here in Kirkland. It was described to me almost as coming in waves, the problems that they had to deal with. First was recognizing that this was happening and confirming that and then springing into action, which, as you would imagine, nobody even knew what this was. So doing that was this unbelievable task. By then, they realized that they needed the proper equipment to do that. So negative pressurized rooms, COVID wings, tents, and PPE, so protective equipment, basic stuff like masks and gloves. And by the time they realized that they needed that, there was a realization that healthcare workers and EMTs and nurses and doctors and firefighters were handling these patients without that proper protection for days. So then you had nurses and doctors and firefighters getting sick in droves. The nurses here, the healthcare workers at this care facility, 70 of them got sick while they're treating sick patients. Nearly the entirety of the Kirkland Fire Department had to quarantine at one point. I spoke to a doctor at nearby Evergreen Health, where a lot of these patients, after they got too sick to deal with here, went there, where one of the first confirmed deaths was. Here's what he told me about dealing with this first. Listen to this.
I don't think any of us anticipated the scope, the breadth of this outbreak. There was quite a bit of concern about perhaps taking this home to your family. And I mean, I know many people who checked into hotels until this was clearly, there was some sense of how transmissible this was.
And the doctor said essentially that, you know, he wished it didn't happen anywhere, but he was in a way happy that it happened in the Seattle area first, because they do have such a strong medical community and they did spring into action.
And
Joe?
Steve, let's talk about the people who live there. I mean, now so many of us have been impacted by this pandemic that we're 2 years in. But since this was ground zero, what was it like for the people just living in Kirkland who had to deal with that first wave when there was so much fear?
My producer, Karen, who's standing next to me, described it as almost an epicenter of fear. Everybody described this as obviously the epicenter of the virus, but there was so much emotion in the atmosphere. Every time an ambulance whizzed by, or anytime, you know, there was activity or a press conference outside of this care facility, the entire community would sort of erupt in this fearful emotion. And remember that this is a virus where you can't really deal with this with the full force of your family because of the quarantine situation. So you may remember pictures of people on their phones with their mom or their dad outside one of these windows. One of them was a woman named Carmen Gray. We spoke to her about what it was like to have a sick parent inside this care facility. Listen to this.
Nobody knew, and fear just kept escalating. And then you saw the ambulances leaving and people not coming back. And it just kept escalating. The fear, you know, my mom was in there, you know. We couldn't go in, she couldn't come out. And it was just a waiting, you know, who knew that it would become a pandemic.
1 million deaths, 1 million individual tragedies, people having to watch their loved ones die on a video screen. All of that happened here first. The community, of course, moving on from that, but in a way, never getting over it. Guys, back to you.
Steve Patterson from Kirkland, Washington. Steve, thanks so much.
Thank you. Now, with the U.S. surpassing 1 million deaths due to COVID-19, it may be difficult to grasp just how large that grim number is. NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns puts it into perspective.
1 million. That's how many Americans have lost their lives to COVID-19. A ghastly milestone after 2 years of enduring a pandemic that's still disrupting communities worldwide. For every life lost, there is a story, a memory, and a grieving family. To get a sense of the scale of the tragedy, COVID-19 has now taken more American lives than World Wars I and II combined. Or, looking at it in a different way, it's like wiping out almost the entire population of Delaware. And when compared to the last deadly pandemic, the Spanish flu of 1918, which killed about 675,000 Americans, over 300,000 more lives have perished from COVID. The death toll also surpasses those of many other significant and tragic events in U.S. history. The Civil War claimed about 620,000 lives. At the peak of the AIDS crisis in the early 90s, about 43,000 people died each year, a number well below the yearly average of U.S. COVID deaths. COVID-19 remains the third leading cause of death in the United States, associated with approximately 460,000 deaths in 2021, behind heart disease and cancer, according to a CDC report. Unintentional injuries come after, with more than 219,000 deaths. Influenza, no longer in the top 10, killed almost 42,000. To put that into perspective, COVID has taken more than 10 times the number of lives as the flu in 2021. While these numbers may seem abstract or detached from your reality, this grim marker means that on average, there are roughly 111 deaths per 100,000 people in the U.S., or 1 in 492 Americans, depending on where you live. In states like Texas, 1 in every 341 people has died. Hard-hit cities include LA, where 1 in every 128 people has died. And New York City remains one of the hardest hit, where 1 in every 319 people has died. Also devastating is the number of preventable deaths since vaccines were made available to adults. According to an analysis from Peterson KFF, up to 234,000 deaths since June of last year could have been prevented with vaccinations. That represents 60% of all adult COVID deaths since then. Though there is a drop in deaths in the U.S. and worldwide, experts point to a loss in the quality of data collected as more Americans get vaccinated and cities open back up. And as we approach the new normal with vaccines and boosters readily available, millions of Americans will continue to mourn the loss of so many.
Just heartbreaking. Our thanks to Tasha Burns for that report.
Let's bring in Dr. Scott Hadlin now for more on this. So, Doctor, how do you wrap your mind around this staggering loss of life? Did you think we would ever surpass this number or even get close to this number?
You know, at the outset of this, I don't think any of us thought we would get to this point. I think as we've watched the numbers progress over time, we've gained a healthy respect for this virus and the enormous impact that it's had on so many of us. You know, my colleagues on the front lines, and not just doctors, but nurses, first responders, interpreters helping families who don't speak English, social workers helping to support families, have been working tirelessly for more than 2 years now. And so it really has been just a remarkable 2 years. And I think it's important we take time to pause right now and just acknowledge what we've all been through, not just in the healthcare profession, but across this entire country.
Well, let's talk about where we are right now. I mean, most of the health guidelines and mask mandates that were put in place at the beginning of the pandemic, they're now gone. On top of that, we're seeing COVID cases, even hospitalizations rising again after they fell from the peaks during the winter Omicron surge. So in your mind, as a country, where are we at in terms of handling another potential wave of cases?
Yeah, you know, I think a lot of us are worried in the medical and public health professions, but I actually want to focus on the positive for a second. You know, we have to take stock of the fact that, you know, the majority of people in the country are fully vaccinated. 2/3 of people in the U.S. are fully vaccinated. Here in my own state of Massachusetts, 80% of people are vaccinated. Many people are continuing to choose wear masks to protect themselves and other people in their lives, especially on public transportation and out in public. And of course, we have new tools. We've got got vaccine boosters that are proving effective. We have new medications to help treat people when they get infected to help prevent them from getting worse and from being hospitalized. So we actually have a lot of tools in our arsenal right now to help support us. But you're right, infection rates continue to rise. There are new subvariants and subvariants of subvariants, and rates have risen, in particular in the last couple of weeks. And so we still need to remain vigilant.
And Doctor, quickly on this last question, when people ask you, is COVID with us for the foreseeable future? What's your answer?
I think the answer is probably yes. Time will tell, but again, we've got many tools. We have vaccination. We know that masks work. We have new medications that help us. People can test themselves at home and help protect others. So we have a lot of things that we can do to protect one another and ourselves. And I think that's really what I want to focus on as we learn how to live with this.
Dr. Scott Hadlin, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. And NBC News is creating a collection of images that represent those we have lost to the virus. If you have a loved one or someone important to you that has died because of COVID-19, you can upload a special photo of them or any image that represents a memory of the time you shared. Go to the link at the bottom of your screen there, NBCnews.com/COVID collections.
Let's turn now to the war in Ukraine, where all eyes are on the city of Mariupol this morning. Russia has announced a 3-day ceasefire on that blockaded steel plant, saying it will open a humanitarian corridor to allow civilians to evacuate the facility. That comes after the Ukrainian commander leading troops inside the plant said, quote, difficult, bloody battles are being fought there. NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley joins us now from an aid distribution center in southeastern Ukraine. Matt, good to have you with us again today. You've been bringing us these incredible, harrowing stories of people escaping, which I'll ask you about in just a moment. But first, let's talk about the fighting there at that steel plant. What do we know about it, and do we trust this ceasefire?
Yeah, I mean, good morning, Joe and Savannah. We've heard that actually there's been renewed fighting from city officials of Mariupol saying that this assault is ongoing. Now, that's an interesting development considering that the Russians had announced last night that as of 8 a.m. this morning, which is about 6 hours ago, that they would be implementing a sort of a ceasefire to allow people, those remaining civilians of whom there's thought to be about 600, to leave. Now, this ceasefire was supposed to be every single day during daylight hours, starting today for the next 2 or 3 days. So it's troubling that there is a renewed offensive on that plant while there was supposed to be a ceasefire to allow people to get out. So no, there isn't much trust in these evacuations. The fact is that these planned humanitarian corridors had failed in the past. We did see one successful one earlier in the week, and a lot of those people ended up here in Zaporizhia, where I am now. But it looks as though, once again, that the Russians may be scuttling their own plans for a ceasefire and humanitarian evacuations. Guys?
It's just hard to hear. Matt, we mentioned you're at an aid center for displaced people. What's the situation like for people who have fled? What stories are you hearing?
Well, actually, we haven't been speaking to as many people here. We've spoken to some people last night. This is a place, though, where a lot of the aid that the U.S. and other organizations have been donating are ending up. And you can actually see over here, this is USAID donated stuff. This is mostly geriatric hygiene materials. And this stuff over here, we've got flour, we've got canned goods. Again, you can see this USAID marker here. We're seeing Red Cross. We're seeing UN boxes. So there's a lot of goods that are coming here. And all of this is mostly for people who have come from war-scarred areas around here in Zaporizhia. It's not necessarily for the residents of this city. There are as many as 1,000 to 3,000 people who come here every day. And I spoke with the organizers. They said that actually this is for essentially first-timers. You can't really come back and depend on the goods here because they simply don't have enough. City officials and other organizations are expected to pick up the slack if you are living here for a long period of time. So this facility, while, again, it serves a huge number of people on a daily basis, those are all first-timers. So the need here remains very acute. They need to get more supplies because there are a lot of people who are coming not just from Mariupol, but from the surrounding region, the border, or the line of control, as they call it, where there is that beyond that line of control is Russian-occupied area. That's only about 30 minutes away. So Zaporizhia is the center of the relief effort and the evacuation effort for the whole region. Guys?
Matt, I want to ask you a little bit about the state of the fight. This morning, Russia's defense ministry said it killed 600 Ukrainian fighters overnight in artillery strikes. Do we have any information on those? And what's the latest on Russia's progression in that eastern Donbass region?
Yeah, I mean, to answer your second question, the progression in the eastern Donbass region has been as slow and halting as it has been since Russia announced a fresh offensive in that part of the country. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, they withdrew from the area around Kyiv, and now it looks as though they're not making any additional progress, any real additional progress. And the Ukrainians, while the Russians have seized a couple of small towns and villages, the Ukrainians have succeeded as well in pushing them back. So there's fierce fighting all up and down the eastern part of the country. Those 600 soldiers that you mentioned, it's hard to understand how the Russians have those numbers, because a lot of those people have been killed, or a lot of the airstrikes that they announced overnight were hitting munitions depots and transportation hubs in the center of the country. How the Russians will be able to get in and have intelligence on how many people they killed, it's hard to know. And the Ukrainians haven't really been commenting on that quite so much. So, you know, this is kind of maybe blue sky thinking on the part of the Russians, sort of throwing out numbers. 600 is a very round number when you're talking about artillery strikes and cruise missiles. So it's hard to know if that number is actually true. But it just goes to show that as far as the Russians are concerned, this entire country remains a target, whether it's close to the front lines in the east or whether it's in the center or in the southeast where I am now. Guys?
Absolutely. We're seeing that unfold. Matt Bradley, thank you so much for your reporting.
For more, let's bring in Medal of Honor recipient and NBC News military analyst, Colonel Jack Jacobs. Good to have you with us, Colonel. So Colorado Congressman Jason Crow, who's an Army veteran who recently visited the region, he says Ukraine is asking the Biden administration ports that have been blocked by Russia's Navy. So would that be enough? And how important is it that Ukraine take back its ports?
Well, it really wants them badly and needs to have them. The Russians have secured the coastline of the southern part of Ukraine against the Black Sea and have initiated a blockade offshore to prevent resupply of the Ukrainians, evacuation of civilians through the Black Sea, and also to establish a beachhead from which they could extend their control, the Russian control, all the way to the west. And the Ukrainians would like to have long-range anti-ship missiles so that they can prevent the blockade from continuing and enable resupply from the Black Sea. It's really important for the Ukrainians to have them. It's really important for the Russians that the Ukrainians do not have them. The anti-ship missiles the Ukrainians have now are homegrown, many of them, or they're short-range missiles from the West, particularly those from the UK, who only have a range of about 20 or 30 kilometers. So it's important for the Ukrainians to have longer-range anti-ship missiles, Joe.
I want to ask you about the European Union, which is proposing a complete ban on Russian oil by the end of the year. I mean, beyond the fact that it would take money away from Russia, what kind of impact could that have on Russia's ability to just continue fighting this war?
Well, a big impact, except that the end of the year is a long time from now. It would be much better if they stop imports now, but of course that would create havoc in the West. And the EU has said that they want to have a ban in an orderly fashion to phase it in. The problem with instituting a ban in the EU is that it requires unanimous support from the EU. And at the moment, not everybody wants to do that, particularly Hungary, and looks like an ally of Russia, and they'll vote against it. So it's going to be difficult for the EU to institute the kind of ban we're talking about without a great deal of support from everybody else inside the EU. It's unlikely to have a direct impact on the offensive that's taking place now in the east and the south, Joe.
And Colonel, I have a very quick question for you here. We're a few days away from a significant Russian holiday. It's known as Victory Day. What could that mean for the fighting on the ground?
Well, there's a lot of speculation that Putin is going to use Victory Day, which marks the end of the defeat of the Nazis during the Second World War, use Victory Day as a day to declare war on Ukraine. Sort of superfluous at the moment since the war has been going on for 9 or 10 weeks already. But it's a symbolic day. It's very, very important in Russia. And Putin is liable to use it to not only declare war, but to extend the attack on Ukraine, redouble his efforts to seize and control Donbass in the southern part of Ukraine. But it remains to be seen whether or not he can even do it, principally because the Russians have not been all that successful on the ground, Joe.
Colonel Jack Jacobs, thanks for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Now, the aftermath of that draft opinion shockingly leaked from the Supreme Court that outlined overturning Roe versus Wade. We're seeing reaction from both sides of the abortion debate, something that's been a bigger motivator for Republicans historically, but now Democrats across the country are springing into action. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Rafa joins us now from Washington. Hey, Ali, good to have you with us. So, of course, this leak comes amidst the backdrop of the impending midterm elections. Many had expected Republicans did have a chance to possibly capture the House and Senate. Is there a chance a real threat to Roe versus Wade has an impact on that?
Yeah, Savannah, well, as you mentioned, Republicans have fought for decades to get conservative justices on the court for this very reason. And now they're really talking more so about this leak and how impactful it is to the Supreme Court. They're saying it's an embarrassment to the Supreme Court. They're calling for an investigation into how this became public, saying it damages the reputation of the court. And on Capitol Hill, they're really preferring to talk about any legislation but this. And now there's a real concern looming whether this could fire up the Democratic base and distract from Republicans' midterm efforts, issues that they wanted to campaign on, like crime, inflation, the crisis at the border, among other issues. And now GOP candidates are figuring out really how to talk about this, if they are commenting on it at all. Actually, our team got our hands on some new polling as well as some National Republican Senatorial Committee talking points that were released that really provide candidates with talking points on this. And I'll read a few of them to you now. It says, it tells Republicans to, quote, be the compassionate consensus builder on abortion policy and focus on Democrats, quote, using obsession over abortion to avoid talking about their record. It says this is a draft opinion, so we will wait to see what the final decision of the Supreme Court is in the coming months. The polls findings, the NRSC polls findings, say Republicans should message that they will, quote, not take away contraception or women's health care, Savannah. So this is definitely going to be something we're watching, just how Republicans continue to figure out how to talk about this as we approach the midterm elections.
Yes, certainly. So now let's talk about kind of the divide in the country and what can be done about this. We do have some new numbers on this. It comes from a Washington Post ABC News poll taken just last week. It shows 54% of U.S. adults want to preserve the ruling of Roe versus Wade, while 28% want to overturn it. Of course, that's talking about that decision there. This is not a law. This is not a federal law. That's the whole conversation here. And Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has already said he plans to hold a vote to try to codify Roe versus Wade into law. Is it possible that move would have any Republican support?
Yeah, so we know Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is in talks with senators to try and get this to a vote on the floor next week. But the big question here is, what is that bill, what is that legislation going to look like if the first draft of this, the Women's Health Protection Act that passed in the House last February but didn't make it to the Senate, didn't garner GOP support? We know that Senators Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins have their own version of this. So we're hearing, our team is hearing from senators involved in this, that this bill that will take the floor next week will have very minor modifications to this original bill. So it begs the question, will these two senators jump on board? We know that there is some controversy over some language, some specific language in this bill that's expected to take the floor. So this is definitely something we are watching. Perhaps the language in this bill can change. Maybe there will be some consensus agreed upon. So this is definitely something we're keeping an eye on as we approach next week. But the main issue here is, even if this does get taken to a vote, Democrats still don't have the numbers to nuke a filibuster. One thing that Democrats are hoping for is just to get all senators on the record with where they stand on this, Republicans and Democrats. So especially ahead of midterms, that will really put everyone on the record with where they stand.
All right, Ali Rafa, thank you so much.
Time to get a check on your morning news now. Weather.
Which means Michelle Grossman is here with us in studio. Hi,
Yay.
Michelle.
Hi there, guys. And last night we watched tornadoes. We watched severe weather. We're going to watch that once again today. Not only today, but tomorrow, also Saturday. So this is what we saw last night. 8 tornado reports through Texas, also Oklahoma. We saw 20 wind reports, and we saw 38 hail reports through many states. And we're going to see that once again today. So let's show you what we expect over the next several days. This is our 5th day of severe weather. It's only May 5th. For this month, and we're going to see this over the next several days. So today we do have an enhanced risk. That's 3 out of 5 on the scale. By tomorrow, we have a slight risk, and we're looking at a risk on Sunday and also on Monday. So let's go ahead and take a look at today, the closer look here. 20 million at risk. Once again, we're looking at the chance for tornadoes, some hail, also some damaging winds. And it looks most likely in this orange here. That's your enhanced risk. Waco, Lufkin, Shreveport, Little Rock, you are in the mix for that. But we have a slight risk that's a little bit larger, extending from Texas all the way to parts of southern Indiana, also Kentucky. And then tomorrow it slides to the east. Now 33 million people at risk for winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, damaging hail once again in an isolated tornado. This stretches from the Gulf Coast all the way to parts of the Ohio Valley into parts of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. A flood threat. This is a big one. We've already seen a few inches of rain in some spots. Now, remember, they had storms here on Monday, so the ground's already saturated. We're adding to rain today. We're going to be seeing that throughout the day. So we do have flash flood warnings. This is what it looks like on radar right now. Still seeing some lightning. Additional rainfall, 3 to 4 inches as we go throughout the day. Look at all this rain in the eastern part of the nation, right? We're looking at a lot of rain where you see the reds and the oranges, up to 2 inches in some spots. That includes the Northeast as well. So as we go throughout time here, the May storms, flood risk due to excessive rainfall, saturated soil, strongest across Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana. And as we look towards tomorrow, there it goes off to the east. So the Northeast is going to be wet tomorrow.
Isn't it supposed to be April showers,
right?
Spring, May flowers?
I know. Yeah.
But we have the snow flowers in April, so does that?
That's true.
What does that bring?
The flowers as well. You're right. But, yeah.
All right. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.